As the biggest global crisis most of us have lived through, COVID had a destructive impact on everyone, including the literary community.
From March 2020, our diaries and venues and lecture halls emptied. Readings and courses were cancelled, festivals were postponed, theatres closed.
At the start of COVID, we had about 40 projects going, from writing within the NHS to writing within trade unions to child and adolescent mental health units. And all those projects imploded at the start of COVID because they were all face-to-face and they were all in institutions which suddenly became pretty busy with other preoccupations than writing.
We needed literature like never before. We needed it to comfort and distract us. We realised that the act of writing allows us to express and make sense of ourselves and the bewildering new world we found ourselves in. We rose to the challenge. We found a way. At the Kendal Poetry Festival Rising to the Challenge event, we heard about the extraordinary ways our community had responded to the crisis.
We cancelled all our courses at all our 3 residential writing houses in March, and we opened Arvon at Home in April. But the tech was so easy, it was literally a matter of a couple of weeks, and we were able to offer all those people who were absolutely heartbroken that they couldn't come to the 3 writing houses the chance to experience the Arvon creative writing journey online. And bizarrely, it translated unbelievably easily. It was cheaper, it was easier, it embedded their writing practice at home. And a lot of people were treated differently because they were saying to their family members and friends, I'm taking some time for me to write. And for the first time ever, whatever little space they found for themselves, it changed the way they were seen in their own domestic environment.
There's been this feeling, I think, of sort of breathlessly hurtling forwards, and you realise what's possible. You take small steps. So we started doing little online workshops and small salon events, and we were sort of figuring out the technology and just learning it as we were going along. And then we got to the point where we thought, actually, maybe we can do something in July, maybe we can. We really didn't just want to do a smaller version of what we'd programmed, which I think I get the sense is that what Kendal's done as well. We wanted to just try and create something for this new platform.
One of the great things was it meant that we were able to employ a dozen poets straight away as part of a workshop programme that the team at the Poetry Business put together.
Beyond those first few baffled and frozen weeks, the literary community adapted. We changed at a rate and a scale we could never have imagined. We wrestled with new technology. We migrated online. We live streamed, we zoomed, we tweeted and conferenced and PM'd and posted. We filmed and recorded, and it mattered.
At Kendal Poetry Festival, the tickets sold and sold. We expanded from a 3-day festival to a 10-day online experience, featuring over 60 poets from around the world. As events organisers mastered the technology and shifted online, we discovered that it came with significant benefits.
It's a bit of a gain of intimacy in a way where somebody might appear to be reading to you. You know that there are loads of people listening, but you feel it's for you.
Zoom has this way of heightening and focusing you down. They have a peculiar intensity, don't they?
So I used to travel all over the country, setting up a project in Yeovil Hospital Trust or in Coventry and Warwick Hospital Trust. That was 2 days' work. Now that could be done in half an hour.
I have had the time to write because I've not been dashing off around the country, doing readings, stressing out about things. I've had this time to read and invest in myself. And I think part of everything being online has been I've had the nourishment, so I've got better at what I do.
People talked about this, the way that dreams seem to be closer and dream life seem to be closer to the surface of our lives. And so the writing that was done in these workshops, writing is partly a way of dreaming awake, isn't it? That you don't know quite what you're saying or why. That really made an impact on people. When people would read back, they wrote something they didn't know they were going to do, and they shared it in this workshop. So that was a really positive outcome for us under the surface of our conscious lives.
I learned a lot of things from writers on YouTube as well, or on blogs. I made more use of them than I would have done.
I do love the fact that people from all over the world who love poetry can come to your events. That was very moving for me. I would always ask people in the chat, where are you from? That was a wonderful thing that we'd hopefully continue with through live streaming in future years.
That has completely opened our lives. We've just met so many people from around the world that we couldn't possibly have seen. They've all got into our kitchen.
The real joy, I think, for us last year was being able to commission more writers than we would do normally. We knew that we had this incredible pool of talent, particularly in the north of England, of writers and artists, but just the joy of being able to do more of that than we would do normally, and being stunned when the work came back to us and see the standard and the brilliance of people out there. That was really one of the highlights for me of this year.
As a disabled writer and performer, access has meant that I can now do from 2 to maybe 10 or 12 events in a week, because I'm not physically having to get out of my wheelchair. I'm not physically having to mess with my hearing aids. There's just so much less work behind being able to go to events.
Making sure that we were captioning and providing transcripts where possible. So that was another thing that we learned was really important, to allow as many people as possible to engage with digital.
Looking at the words of the poems on the screen, I found it was a real aid to concentration, and also interesting to see what the poems look like.
But it wasn't straightforward.
It's not the same as actually being in the buzz of the crowd and getting that immediate reaction, feeling how an event is going because the atmosphere changes in the room, having those awful moments where you go, oh, please don't ask that question from the Q&A. So all those things that really make live literature events unpredictable and exciting.
I really just miss meeting people and having chats.
Things like Zoom funerals feel really sad and really hard to lose, but also there's grieving of the really small losses, like just being able to spontaneously meet a friend, or just being able to touch someone, or just being able to sit and laugh with someone openly, or just being able to go to the GPs and you're not both in masks so you can see the expression on each other's faces. Those are all losses.
Over the COVID period, I have really missed, after reading workshop drinks and chat, being in the pub, having poems and giving feedback on them in person with pen, having physical audience reactions, poetry sighs when something nice is read, browsing pamphlets after readings, handing over cash, and also a work-life balance.
Trauma describes any extraordinarily difficult event. It can lead to disorder. It can also lead to positive change. With the right conditions and support, we can find meaning and creativity in adversity. We can grow from it.
If we look at a situation like COVID, the idea from Otto Scharmer of Theory U is that we see that there's a problem, and then we typically in organisations have a thinking solution to it. So we go straight to, this is the problem, how are we going to resolve it? The problem for us is that it's not enough to resolve the issue. If you can see thousands of examples. So Otto Scharmer's Theory U suggests that if we think about the issue as a U shape, rather than going from one end of the U to the other, straight to the thinking solution and not resolving it, we need to go down into the bottom of the U. We need to go to a place where we utilise all of our centres, not just the thinking centre, but our emotional centre, our intuitive centre, and we need to fully meet each other there in order that we can utilise all of our capacities to come up with the solution.
COVID was a global trauma, and its painful impact will be experienced at individual and a global level for years to come. But we've experienced and learned that we need each other, that we have a profound responsibility for each other. We learned that as a community, we can change.
As the third lockdown is lifted, and as the doors to venues across the UK begin to open, our community, like the whole world, faces an uncertain future.
It's fair to say digital work, it's not going anywhere. It's here to stay, and we'll ensure that it remains part of our annual plans, whilst also building back live events in the autumn. But that said, whilst we'll always run a live festival in the October period, we'll also be producing more work year round, so that we're not putting so much energy into just that small window, because I think for different audiences, different times of years are very important, and particularly with our outreach work as well.
We've worked with people from really, literally from New Zealand, in the States, Singapore, in Scandinavia, India, and also people from far away as Norway North Yorkshire who wouldn't have come in that we've been seeing, quite regularly. And I hope we'll continue to do that. But what I'm saying is I'm not sure whether we will really. I mean, we'll certainly offer it, but we won't be doing it as frequently, I shouldn't have thought, because I'm hoping in a way that people won't feel the need to do that.
It's really important to allow as many people as possible to engage with digital, but also recognising that digital creates its own inequalities, and there are lots of people who are excluded who don't have access to digital for economic or geographic reasons. So we need to bear that in mind in the future and make sure that we haven't just decided that digital is the only way of going forward.
There are still groups of people that can't access this. So I think it's important that we do continue online events and that in-person events come back, but we also need to centre on making space for the people that aren't represented still, because they're there, they exist.
Maybe the challenge now is to decide what we want to change. COVID exposed the fault lines in our community, in destroying our old certainties, in forcing us to find new ways of working and creating and teaching and coming together. It asks us, what kind of artists, what kind of business, what kind of community, what kind of people we want to be.
I've learned to be very grateful. My husband was very ill at the beginning of lockdown, the first lockdown, and he works in A&E. He basically, got very ill in the early days. He was in hospital for 10 days, didn't know what was happening, and that was a very scary time. So things could have turned out very differently. Thank God he's well and he's back at work, and I guess I've really learned not to take things for granted. That's something that I hope I never forget.
The pandemic has also made us think about where our values are, what's important to us, I guess, and it's given people time to think, to consider where their lives are and what they're doing. This way forward, there seems to be this great kind of opening up of community.
The Door by Miroslav Holub. Go and open the door. Even if there's only the darkness ticking, even if there's only the hollow wind, even if nothing is there, go and open the door. At least there'll be a draft.